you here. We're glad to have all of you here.
Yeah. It's good to see Kelly again.
It is, and it's good to see you, as always.
Yeah.
I remember my first, I had met David plenty of places, but he invited me to his home. It must have been the early 80s. It was for a conference that Tom Garrels was sponsoring, and you put me up for a couple of nights, and you said, stay here because it's the only room that doesn't have cat hair in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the 2 cats back then. Well, it's good to see you, Kelly. It's good to see all of you tonight.
You look great, David.
I'm feeling pretty good. I just wanted to say that on December the 17th, we're going to have the unveiling ceremony for Wendy's tombstone at the cemetery.
Oh, fabulous. I mean, it's important, not fabulous, but
yeah, it's
momentous.
I know what you mean. Finally, the tombstone is there. It's ready. And we're going to have it on the 17th of December, which coincidentally is the 58th anniversary of the first time I started to search for comets back in 1965.
Wow. You had any luck with that?
A little bit, a little luck, a little bit of luck. I love the search. I just love doing it, though. And I'll do it tonight.
There you go.
You've got clear skies, huh?
Yes, it's clearing beautifully.
I would love to have clear skies.
Well, we had rain today, but it's clearing now.
That's nice. I think I've been under clouds for I don't know how long now. I know we have this big solar storm that's been happening all around, and I can't see anything but clouds.
Right. We're in the same boat.
Yeah, clouds or not. I hope to see all of you at the Kansas City League Convention next summer because I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
Yep. We will see you there.
Yeah.
We might have Kelly will probably have to drag off a cruise.
Right. David, have you met Diana Hannakainen from Sky and Telescope yet?
No, I have not yet.
So she's sort of taken the mantle of the amateur engagement, I guess, for lack of a better word. And she's been going to the league meetings for the last couple of years.
Oh, then I must have met her last year at Baton Rouge.
She has a lovely English / Italian / Finnish accent because she's a little bit of all those. She's a former research radio astronomer. And she's an amateur astronomer. She's still a member of her club in Florida. She's a really well-rounded person who happens to write well. And you should make it. She's doing most of the league contact these days. And in case nobody told you, I'm retired now.
Yeah, I figured that, but
it doesn't sound that way.
I did meet her at Baton Rouge, and I will see her again in Kansas City.
Yeah, I think we met her at NEAF and we met her at Albuquerque, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. And she's been invaluable in working on the new Astronomy Day program. She and our new Astronomy Day coordinator, they're just really taken it and gone with it. So I'm very encouraged about that.
That's Mike Modron?
Yes, correct. From Omaha.
That's really terrific to hear because it's I apologize. I'm gonna have to go get something to drink. I have had a cold for a month. Oh, it's like it's not COVID, it's not strep, it's not RSV. I've had a cold, but my wife and I keep giving it
cruiser cold.
Yeah, cruiser
cold.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Your echo is still there, by the way.
Oh, is it? Okay. Let me take care of that. How's that sound?
I mean, Scott, we know you like the sound of your own voice, but
I do. I want to continually hear it back and forth and back and forth, you know.
You took care of it there.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna go get we're gonna start like momentarily or what? Or have we started?
Yeah, go ahead, get a drink, Kelly.
No, we're live, but we're behind this screen here, so
okay, I'll be right back. Just 30 seconds.
He just
Oh, Kelly
vanished. Did
just
you notice
vanished.
that?
What's
Yeah,
that?
that was great.
He vanished. He just
Just
did.
flipped
I
right
saw
out.
that. That was wonderful.
That was. We need to dance like somebody beamed him out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's see him come back now. That's
Yeah.
great.
I love the picture of Stonehenge. That is gorgeous.
Isn't
Oh,
that cool?
yeah.
I wish I
that
were
is
See a
standing there.
Wikipedia right there.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You done good. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
pretty.
And we do have a
I've been
little
there.
featurette about Stonehenge. So,
I was there the day before they closed it to the public.
oh, wow.
Really? Look at
It was
him. Look at him coming
1976.
back.
So you can't look at.
There's Kelly.
Yeah, hi Kelly again.
Okay. All righty. So is everyone ready?
Yeah.
We're
Ready.
ready.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Well, if you're watching right now, and I see several of you are, thanks for tuning in. This is the 33rd Astronomical League Live Program with featuring J. Kelly Beatty and David Levy, hosted by Terry Mann, and also with special guest Carroll Iorg, the president of the Astronomical League. I'm your astro production wizard back here, Scott Roberts, and this is a lot of fun. We are really honored to have the Astronomical League join us so much and for us to be able to broadcast the Astronomical League Live Program. So we're going to take it away now.
Humans have always wanted to learn about the sun, but it's dangerous to stare at it with just our eyes, so we built structures to help us study it. Aristotle had his camera obscura. Galileo used a telescope to document sunspots. Spectrometers came next, allowing us to study the spectrum of the sun's light. 100 years later, George Ellery Hale explored the magnetic nature of the sun with a spectroheliograph. Next, we launched Skylab, and it gave us our first high-resolution pictures of the sun's surface. The Yoko spacecraft took X-rays of the sun. Then SOHO and Hinode sent us even more incredible images. TRACE delivered the closest ever pictures of the sun in its magnetic fields. SDO images the sun in many wavelengths. Now, with stereo, we see the whole sun in 3D, never missing an inch. Who knows what we will see next? We will just have to keep looking up.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Scott Roberts from Explore Scientific and the Explorer Alliance. And to my side here, I'm not sure which side you're seeing, but is Terry Mann, the secretary of the Astronomical League and the official host of Astronomical League Live. And I'm going to turn it all over to you, Terry.
Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you all for being here. I was just complaining to everybody earlier. We've got all this aurora happening everywhere, and I love the aurora, but Ohio has been totally clouded out. I think a lot of the East Coast has been. And so I'm curious, do me a favor, if any of you are able to get onto chat, let me know if you saw it and what state you might be in. I'll be a little more jealous, but that's okay. So tonight, as Scott said earlier, we have Kelly Beatty with us, which it's so nice to have Kelly. We haven't seen him for a while, so it'll be great to hear his talk on the mysteries of Stonehenge. We have David Levy here that will kick us off here in just a minute. It is so nice to see your face. It's such an honor to have you at every Astronomical League Live program. We really appreciate you being here.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're sure glad you are. And of course, we have Carroll Iorg, and it's always nice to have Carroll here to hear what's going on with the league. And it's just nice to see people, even though we're not face to face exactly in person. So it is so nice to see everybody here. So thank all of you so much, and thank everybody else for tuning in. We're going to have a great time tonight. So let's go ahead and start with David. And how about if you get us started with some of your beautiful poetry?
Well, thank you, Terry. And I'd like to introduce the telescope I brought with me this time. It is called Ophelia, and I've had Ophelia since shortly after my first practice wife and I got a separation and a divorce. And 1978, I've had this telescope since then. 1979, actually. It's been a long, long time. And it still works. It's a good telescope. And it's really good to see Kelly again. It's been a long time. It's good to see Carroll. It's great to see Scotty, who actually saved me by giving me a new link so I could join you tonight. And the other thing is that I will be at the Astronomical League gathering next year, in-person gathering in Kansas City, and I hope to see all of you there as well. And I'm really looking forward to that, and looking forward to a 2024, hopefully a better year for all of us. My poem tonight is from Robert Frost, and Robert Frost was great at very short poems. And I think the other person who was really great at short poems was Shakespeare, who wrote a whole collection of sonnets, which he's really famous for. But tonight's poetry reading will be very simple by Robert Frost, a question. A voice said, "Look me in the stars and tell me truly, men of earth, if all the soul and body scars were not too much to pay for birth." Now that is a question and a half. And I just discovered this poem today, added it to my list. And I just wanted to say that if I could blow the horn of another book for a second, that I'm writing now my latest book, which is The Night Sky in Poetry. There will be all of the poems that I have quoted over the last number of years here, and each one will be analyzed and discussed. I don't know when that book's going to be out. It'll probably be a long time, but I'm working on it now. Anyway, Terry, back to you, and thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and we look forward to seeing you at Alcon in Kansas City. We're looking forward to Alcon for everything that's going on. Carroll, the Kansas City group, has done just an amazing job with everything that I have seen coming up. I forget when the website's coming online, or is it already online or coming on in another month or two?
Next few weeks, it should be up and running. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're all looking forward to it. So, Carroll, what's going on with the league? Or what's going on anywhere that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, a lot going on everywhere right now. But specifically, I'd like to talk a little bit more about Alcon. There's coming along, like you say, Terry, very well. And if I can share my screen, let's see if I can bring a little bit more of that up to date here. And everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay. These are the dates. Alcon's coming to KC July 17th through the 20th. We'll be meeting at the Doubletree. That's the headquarters. And as Terry was saying earlier, we're going to have the website up fairly soon. The committee is really, they're looking at everything. I mean, the speakers galore. I think we've just about got them all set. There's just so many fine people. And let me go to the next screen here. The first night, and some of you, anyone who's a Kansas City Chiefs football fan, knows that this is the place where the team gathers on important events, whether it's the Super Bowl championship or whatever. This is the place they meet. We are going to meet there for our first night of Alcon at the Gottlieb Planetarium. It's a well-done facility. That's for Wednesday night, the 17th. Then the next night, and this photo, by the way, is courtesy of Linda Hall Library. Back in 2016, one of our speakers here, David Levy, he was present for turning over his observing logs to the Linda Hall Library. That's going to be a feature of our convention, is being able to see some of those, and also his first telescope that is also in residence at Linda Hall Library. In addition, there'll be a reception to go along with that at the same time. So we're really looking forward to that. And David, thank you so much for being available for that. Really looking forward to it. On
I'm going to be at
yeah, that's going to be fun.
I'm going to be at the conference in Kansas City and at the Linda Hall Library. What could be better than that? And I'm really looking forward to that and to seeing all of you there.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. On Friday night at our usual Starbecue that we do at each Alcon, we're going to have the actual Starbecue at the Overland Park Arboretum, which is about 10 miles south of Kansas City. And we're going to have our meal there, and then we're going to go on down to Powell Observatory, just down south of that facility, and we'll be having a talk down at the observatory. And that's one of our nighttime shots from one of our photographers. It's we've been in business at Powell Observatory since 1985. Recently, we were able to purchase land for another facility that will be a little further out in dark skies. However, this one is still doing an extremely good job for the public, and we've done some very innovative things since COVID forced us to really change things, how we operate. So that's going to be a good thing to see. So I invite you all to attend that as well on the trip. And finally, we're going to have Star Trek actor Tim Russ, who played the role of Lieutenant Commander Tuvok on Star Trek. Just so happens Tim is also an amateur astronomer, musician, and writer. He's also working with NASA, supplying several images of asteroids for their asteroid research. And rumor has it that if it works out, he's going to be playing with our jazz band, which we're probably going to have at the banquet on Saturday night. So he's a very talented individual, very approachable, and we're really looking forward to that as well. One of our members knows him from the Griffith days, and he really does an excellent job out there of doing research with the public as far as astronomy. And I'll quit sharing now, but that's sort of where we are right now. We've got probably we're probably almost full on speakers, but we can always use some more, but we're coming along very nicely. And I think that's it for right now. Back to you, Terry.
Well, thank you, Carroll. That's the first I've seen the slideshow of all this. That is going to be so much fun. You will have rates like a couple days ahead or a couple days after for people that want to come early or stay a little bit later and look around.
That's exactly right. We have such events as the World War I Museum that gets a lot of attention. Also, we have the Negro Leagues exhibit there in Kansas City. It's interesting. They sold the rights to the Monarchs baseball not too long ago. They came to an agreement for the minor league team in Kansas City to carry that name. And so there's a lot of exciting things going. And for you streetcar fans, maybe by the time of the convention, the construction will be somewhat done where you can actually get away on the streetcar. It's going down Main Street right now. So I think that'll be a nice addition as well.
Oh,
it's absolutely
fun.
Free.
That will be fun. That sounds like a great time. I am looking forward to it. So thank you so much, Carroll. It sounds like everything's
we got a good committee who's putting it together.
It sure sounds like it. Thank you. And thank them for all the work they're doing. That looks incredible. So, all right. Kelly, it is good to talk to you, but don't you start your talk yet because I want to read your bio. Because I'm sure everybody knows who you are, but I need to do this anyway. It is so nice to see you. It has been, wow. I think I did see you. It's been a couple, 3 years ago, probably. And I can't remember where it had to be at an Alcon. So, thank you so much for being here.
That's my pleasure, Terry. And, I have to say, before you read whatever bio you've got, I hope that those of you who are watching appreciate that the 5 people who are here, Scott and Carroll and David and Terry and me, these are people who have spent their lifetimes in the furtherance of amateur astronomy. And, amateur is from the French word to love. All of us love astronomy. We love telling people about astronomy, stargazing in all of its forms. And I can't think of a better group of people to be carrying that flag than the ones we have here. So thanks for the invitation, and thanks for all that the league does.
Well, thank you, Kelly. That's really nice. So, all right, let me go ahead, Kelly. You can get ready, and I am going to introduce J. Kelly Beatty. He has been explaining science and the wonder of astronomy to the public since 1974, when he joined the staff of Sky and Telescope. An award-winning writer, communicator, he specializes in planetary science and space exploration. In 2018, after 43 years of pounding the keyboard, he retired from full-time work, but remains actively involved in many Sky and Telescope articles, tours, and other projects. Kelly holds a bachelor degree from the California Institute of Technology and a master's degree from Boston University. Asteroid 2925 Beatty was named on the occasion of his marriage in 1983, and he remains on the front line of fighting light pollution locally and nationally. And I thank you a lot for that too, Kelly. You have done a lot, and it's a real honor to have you here tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Terry. As I have in retirement, I'm finding that I'm really able to capitalize on all the years I spent at Sky and Telescope, but really go beyond that to talk to people, especially beginners, adult beginners, who have always had a curiosity about astronomy, but don't understand it. And my mantra is that astronomy can be beautiful. It can be technical for sure, but it can be just beautiful. And so tonight I'm going to be talking about a place on the Earth that we all think we know something about, and yet we know very little about. And this is a talk that I could not have put together even 5 years ago. So I'm going to share my screen, optimize, or I want to share sound for sure, share, go to that and start the presentation. Are we good, Scott?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So I've had a lifelong fascination with Stonehenge. And as you'll see, it has interwoven itself in my life and with my wife in particular. And so we had some things happen recently. Stonehenge is this incredible, iconic place that, and I'll say this a couple of times, the builders of Stonehenge left us nothing in the way of explaining why they did it. There's no written records. There's no, all we have are bone chips of cremated remains. And so we've had to piece this together over time. And so what I hope to talk about tonight is the why, where, how, and when of it all. And in particular, what has been discovered recently about Stonehenge. So let's set the stage here. We're talking about a time in history in the Neolithic times, that is the New Stone Age. When you go back this far in time, we gauge the development of human civilization by their ability to make various tools. And then by the middle and late Neolithic, they had gone beyond just having, a big boulder in their hand that they were smashing things with, to actually shaped tools. And so this is the period of time when Stonehenge came about. And it didn't come about quickly. It was actually over several centuries. So this is the period of time we're talking about, basically contemporary with the oldest pyramids from about 3000 to 2200 BC. Now, here's an interesting fact that maybe no one has realized. In 1903, in the town of Cheddar, England, yes, that's the place that the cheese comes from, and yes, they make cheese there. They found the remains of a quite old human from basically the just post Ice Age, the last Ice Age, and this fellow named Cheddar Man was recently analyzed from a DNA perspective, sort of trying to reconstruct what he might have actually looked like. And the researchers involved were surprised to find out that he had fairly dark skin, but blue eyes. Not exactly the kind of person that you associate with England. And so I'm going to try to get rid of a couple of things here on my screen. Hang on for just 1 second. There you go. Okay. So where did this guy come from? Where did his civilization come from? And we think of the British Islands as being, geographically isolated, but that's really not true. At the end of the last Ice Age, and during the last Ice Age, which is roughly 10,000 years ago, a lot of ice was piled up on land, and the area between England and the continent of Europe was dry. So there was a land bridge to the United Kingdom. And so it's thought that Cheddar Man and the people of that era in the late Neolithic, this was the transition from being hunter-gatherers to actually being an agrarian society where they stayed put, they grew crops. And it appears that a lot of the people who moved into southern England at that time were from Eastern Mediterranean, and in particular the Middle East. And they took root there, and that might help explain the sort of physical characteristics of Cheddar Man. Whatever their origin, one of the things that these peoples did in abundance was build stone monuments. There's a lot of stone in England, and they made good use of them. This is a great website, stonecircles.org.uk, which has mapped all of the stone circles, the henges. A henge is a circular earthwork with a ditch in the middle and an embankment on the outside, and barrows, cairns, and other kinds of piles of stones to commemorate often, the burial sites of loved ones. Now I'm going to show you a few of them that are rather famous throughout the UK. For those who've been to Dublin, Ireland, just north of there, by not very 20 or 30 miles, is a river called the Boyne River, and there's a place called Newgrange, which is alongside that river, which is essentially an enormous burial mound. You see the picture there. You can see the people down there at the lower left corner. For scale, this is an entire burial mound aligned to the sunrise point at winter solstice, about where we're at now. And now on those days, there's a passageway to the central burial chamber that gets illuminated by the rising sun's light, and it illuminates this chamber. It's a fascinating place. I hope you get a chance to see it. In the north of the British Isles, north of Scotland, on the Isle of Lewis, is a kind of poor cousin to Stonehenge called the Standing Stones of Callanish. It's not a stone circle per se. It's actually in the shape of a cross, but if you get to this island, it's very easy to access. There's basically a cow gate that you go through. There's no real charge or anything. You just show up. And this is a very interesting place. I want you to notice that a lot of these stones are not just chunks of rock. They're actually shaped. And this seems to be characteristic of a lot of these stone circles in the Great Britain. Also very far north in Scotland, in Orkney, is a stone circle called the Ring of Brodgar. I had a chance to visit there just a year and a half or so ago, and it's a true stone circle. And nearby is a fragment of the stone circle called the Standing Stones of Stonehenge. Interestingly, over the millennia, a lot of these stone monuments have, as generations go by, their importance ceases to be emphasized or even remembered. And so we see in a lot of these that they're a partial stone circle, like in this case, and that's because a lot of the stones have been repurposed, taken away, and that's certainly the case here. And in fact, in this particular case, the town, the historical commissions have had to negotiate with the local farmers, because it's on private farmland, to keep them from carrying away any more of the stones that are there. Well, back down in southern England is this really large monument, and you can see this is a henge. You can see the ditch and the embankment there very clearly, but just inside the ditch, you can see a ring of standing stones. This is a very large complex that exists today. In some sense, larger than Stonehenge, but not nearly as sophisticated. And then there's the granddaddy of all of them, why we're here tonight, which is Stonehenge itself on the Salisbury Plain. And this is a place about, I would say, about 40 miles to the southwest of London. And as you look across this terrain with Stonehenge there in the foreground, and you can kind of see the henge part, which is much larger than the stone circle itself. There is nothing about this place that is distinctive. It's not like the confluence of three rivers or a giant mountain range, with a peak in the middle. There's nothing to suggest why it was that this particular place on the plains to the southwest of London, what is now London, was chosen for this monument. Whatever the reason, it has been occupied and memorialized for 10,000 years. This is right here is the picture on the left of the old parking lot for Stonehenge. And when they went to remove the asphalt and move it to a new location with a new visitor center, they discovered that there were some holes in the ground. They are what are called tree throws. A tree throw is, imagine that you have a big tree in your yard and you yank it out. There's a hole left behind, and that's a tree throw. And they may be naturally occurring. They might have been like from a post or some kind. In any case, it indicates that this part of Britain was inhabited at least until about 8,000 BC. Whatever the reason, this particular part of Great Britain is just full of monumental works by the people that occupied there. There's Stonehenge, of course. Let's see if I can get my cursor to work. Down here, along the River Avon, is something recently discovered called Blue Stonehenge. This greater cursus that you see is essentially a long linear henge. And we're going to talk about Woodhenge and Durrington walls here for just a minute. This is the part at the top here, this very large henge area is called Durrington walls. It's obviously human made. Its origin and reason for being is a little bit mystical at this point. Down in the corner here, you can see what is called Woodhenge. It's kind of a counterpart to Stonehenge. This is what's there today. There's no wood. This is like holes in the ground into which giant pillars of wood were inserted. The wood is long since rotted away. What you see there now are sort of concrete proxies for where these pillars, totems would have stood. But in its heyday, Woodhenge might have looked something like this. And this was contemporary with the later stages of Stonehenge. So in that vicinity. Interestingly, the scale of Woodhenge and Stonehenge is pretty comparable. The Woodhenge is actually 6 concentric circles of giant wooden poles stuck into the ground. And you can see the henge part around it. This seemed to be a common construction technique for these monumental developments. There would be a henge around the outside. Maybe it was for fortification. Maybe it was ceremonial. Who knows? With whatever the main feature, the main attraction was in the center. So our knowledge of Stonehenge is actually pretty fragmentary over the ages. This is a watercolor from the late 1500s. I think it's a little bit fanciful. It shows, first of all, it shows the stone circle that we're familiar with as much more complete. Notice how you can see the henge there around the outside. It's much closer in this depiction to the stone circle than is actually the case. This is a little bit more realistic. It's from 1797. And we know that this had to be painted before that year because in 1797, this trio of giant stones here called a trilithon fell over. And so we know that it had to have been painted before then. Well, the point is that throughout history, as we know it, Stonehenge was always on private land. And it came to pass that in the late 1800s, it was owned by a family called Antrobus. And the this is a vintage photograph from that time. In the early 1900s, the last surviving heir was killed in World War I. And so they had to get rid of the estate. They had a giant estate sale. And there was a man in that vicinity who lived in the area named Sir Cecil Chubb and his wife Mary. You see them there in this picture. And there was going to be an auction of a lot of the holdings from the Antrobus estate. And Sir Cecil went down there with an eye toward seeing what he might pick up. And it's rumored that his wife Mary said, "Oh, Cecil dear, could you please be a darling and pick me up some curtains for our parlor?" And so he went down to the auction. He did not come back with curtains, but he did come back with the ownership of Stonehenge, which he bought for 6,600 pounds at the time, roughly $1 million in current currency. And then because he recognized its value as a historical and archaeological treasure, turned it over to the British government just 3 years later. Now, just a few days ago, if you can believe it, this purchase of Stonehenge was the final Jeopardy answer on November 29th. And let's see if we can play this.
This is what we like to see, a tight game going into Final Jeopardy. The category is a bit of Britain, players. Here's your clue. In disarray, it was sold at auction in 1915 to a local Wiltshire man who would donate it to the British government 3 years later. 30 seconds. Good luck.
So you notice the blank expressions on all their faces there. None of them got it right, by the way. A couple of them did Stone of Scone, but that was wrong. Anyway, once it was turned over to the British government, an effort was made to sort of give Stonehenge a facelift. It really was in disarray. And it was turned over to the British equivalent of the Army Corps of Engineers, led by Lieutenant Colonel William Hawley, who did a lot of work over an 8-year period. It was quite a protracted renovation, drew a lot of attention nationally and internationally. This is a reproduction from the Richmond, Virginia Times Dispatch about how the ruins are being rebuilt. And after that, excuse me, during that, they accomplished several things. Many of the very large stones that you see are called sarsens. And so they re-erected many of them, although not exactly where maybe they were originally. And importantly, they excavated down to the through the turf to the real surface of this area. Now, this is southern England, and the basement rock here is actually chalk. And if you think of the White Cliffs of Dover, it makes a little bit of sense. So they excavated down. I want you to notice that there is a roadway here that goes right by this large stone, which is called the heel stone. This stone is very important in the summer solstice alignment, which we'll talk about later. But, the point is that people were just driving by this thing all the time. There was a much more extensive renovation that took place in the late 1950s. They re-erected that trilithon that had fallen in 1797 and some other things. And importantly, they stabilized a lot of these sarsens, these huge stones, in concrete so they wouldn't fall over again. And they reset some of the blue stones. Now, we think of Stonehenge as these giant stones that you see there in the picture, but one of the facets of it are these little stones that you see right here that are called blue stones. And this is one of the blue stones right here that are much smaller than the sarsens. So all of this work and the work since then has led archaeologists to understand that Stonehenge was built over a number of centuries and in four distinct stages. And here's the first stage. This is the oldest part. And there's nothing there except basically this big henge, which is about 100 meters across. And there are 4 stones. You can see them here. They're labeled. And there's an entranceway in the northeast corner that allows you to get through the henge and the ditch and the embankment. And I want you to notice those holes. They're labeled Aubrey holes. They play an important role in Stonehenge. The important part here is these holes were part of the original construction there. Now, mind you, this is at a period of time, it's the Stone Age. These people, whoever they were, they had no metal tools. They had no horses. They had no wheels. So everything they did was by brute force labor. The best they had available to them were antler picks for tools. These Aubrey holes, which were first recognized actually in the 17th century and rediscovered by Hawley, when Hawley did his work in the early 1900s, he was not the most careful of archaeologists. In many of the stones, he found cremated remains. And so what he did was he gathered up all the cremated remains from all of the holes and he put them in one hole. Not a very good, smart thing to do from an archaeological point of view. But these Aubrey holes are about a meter across. There are 56 of them. And they do indeed contain a lot of cremated remains of humans, probably burial sites. But there are some rock chips in the bottom of them that are consistent with being from very far away from Wales. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But you get to see, this is the picture on the left there is from an excavation about roughly a decade ago when they really dug down and tried to find out what was going on. So the second stage, still there's no big sarsens yet. The blue stones, these medium-sized stones, really took to the fore. And there were a couple of semicircles of these stones. Very importantly, these blue stones are igneous rock. They are not from anywhere near Stonehenge itself. And for almost a century, geologists have realized that the most likely place they could have come from is from certain sites in Wales to the west, where these stones exist as outcrops. They're, as I said, they're medium-sized. Here you see a picture with a typical science writer for scale. And they're igneous. They're called blue stones because when they get wet or when you have a fresh surface, they do have a sort of bluish tinge to them. So they must have come from Wales, but where exactly has remained a mystery until 2019. That's when I came across this article in the journal Antiquity from a team of geologists and archaeologists led by Michael Parker Pearson in the UK, who had identified a specific outcrop in Wales. That's Wales there in the map that you see there, where they had found a kind of bluestone called spotted dolerite, which matched what was seen at Stonehenge. And so this is a blow up of that. The red square here shows a blow up of this area. And in particular, there are several outcrops of this bluestone-like material, but Parker Pearson and his team identified this spotted dolerite as coming from one outcrop here in the Pressley Hills area of Wales. And so I got in contact with him. I sent him an email and I said, I work for Sky and Telescope. I've got this long fascination with Stonehenge. Can you tell me more than what's in your article? And I got an auto reply saying, hi, this is Professor Pearson. I'm on medical leave. I probably won't get to your email for 3 months. Goodbye. I went, oh, darn. But then the next day, I got another email from that same account. Hello, this is Mrs. Parker Pearson. How lovely of you to write. Michael would be greatly pleased to know of your interest in Stonehenge. Let me tell you how to find this outcrop. You need such and such a map. Go talk to farmer so-and-so. And by the way, at the end of the road, there's a lovely pub. Well, great. So I turned to my wife, Cheryl, and I said, sweetie, how'd you like to go to Wales? And to Wales we went. And of course, we had to go through London first, and we got a chance to visit Stonehenge. More on that in a second. This is Professor Parker Pearson, and this is the outcrop. I found the outcrop following the directions, and it's just a pile of stones. It's not a sacred site or anything like that. And so as a consequence, I'm there and I said, wow, I really need a memento of this occasion. Now, this outcrop has been used by the locals for all kinds of stuff, mailbox posts and all kinds. So I didn't feel bad taking a piece of it with me. But it was a little bit of an ordeal. You can see that all these stones are pretty welded into the turf. I do have a piece of it. So getting back to our Stonehenge story, how did they get them from the Prestley Hills in Wales to the Stonehenge site on the Salisbury Plain? And more importantly, why? What was what did the people in Wales know about Stonehenge? Did the people in Stonehenge know about Wales? Who knows? But it turns out that the key seems to be a monument not far from that site. Here's the same map again, called Wine Mound. And it is there that's a partial circle of stones. There's only 4 left. Only 1 is standing. The other 3 are fallen down. And Parker Pearson was convinced that there was a link between, you can see that it's a bluestone. It's this igneous rock. And he was convinced that there was more to it than that. So in about 5 years ago, he took a team and you can see up here, these are the existing stones. And he continued around what would have been the circle, looking for other evidence that there might have been other stones in the past. Now, there are no stones there now. But any of you who've ever dug a hole in your backyard, you know that once you dig that hole, you've disturbed the surface. And you might fill that hole back in and you might tamp it down. But from a geological point of view, you've left a mark that can be rediscovered. People later on will be able to figure out where your hole was. And so it was with this excavation that they found other holes in the shape of a circle where stones used to be, but are no longer. And I highly recommend that you go to PBS or just YouTube and check out this documentary called The Lost Circle Revealed, which is just a couple of years old. I have a couple of clips from that are very instructive, and here's the first of those.
As one hole after another was unearthed, the shape of the circle was revealed. And its dimensions got the team excited.
Its diameter, 110 meters, was exactly the same as the outer perimeter around Stonehenge. The chances of the two having exactly the same dimensions are really very slim. Wine Mound could be the predecessor for Stonehenge.
But they needed more proof. Could they find evidence of a direct connection between the 2 monuments? An odd-shaped stone hole provided an opportunity to once again use photogrammetry.
We could see the exact shape of the base of each stone that had stood in them. And one of them was very unusual because it had a slightly kind of pentagonal cross-section. And what was interesting was that there was one at Stonehenge which had a very similar form.
Could they match the shape of the Wine Mound hole to the stone at Stonehenge? It fitted like a key in a lock. But this evidence alone was not conclusive. They still didn't know when the circle was constructed.
And so to answer that question, they used a couple of techniques: radiocarbon dating, you've probably heard of, optically stimulated luminescence, you probably have not heard of. It's a characteristic of quartz grains in particular, that when they're exposed to sunlight, they retain a latent energy. And if they haven't been exposed to sunlight since then, you can actually determine how long ago that exposure took place. And so they use these techniques to determine that the holes at Wine Mound, when the stones were removed, had to have been earlier than the earliest stone circles at Stonehenge. And so the chronology is consistent. It appears that for whatever reason, the stone circle existed at Wine Mound, not far from the quarrying site in Wales, and then all of those stones were removed and taken to the Salisbury Plain. Parker Pearson explains a little more.
When Stonehenge started out, it looked very different to how it looks now.
The monument we see today dates to around 2500 BC. But Mike's team confirmed the existence of numerous empty stone holes, evidence that the stones have been rearranged multiple times. The original configuration, dating from around 3000 BC, was an enormous circle made entirely of bluestones.
And I want to fixate on that picture for just a second. Those are the stones that occupied the Aubrey holes. And so the Aubrey holes were never intended to be cremation sites. They are the holes that had the original ring of stones at Stonehenge. And so that part of the mystery became clear. Now, those blue stones got moved around a lot. There are lots of holes on the Stonehenge site that are empty of stones right now, representing multiple configurations of those blue stones over the centuries. This is when the Sarsen Circle was added, roughly about 2500 BC, 2400 BC. And by then, this was a fairly sophisticated and well-developed, mature site, if you will. And you see there that in this upper right-hand corner toward the northeast, there were some sort of ceremonial stones set out, and all kinds of holes left over from previous iterations. You know, there's I just want to take a pause here. This notion that these stones came from so far away, there's no real proof other than their geochemistry. But in English lore from the 1100s, there is a story that Stonehenge was built by Merlin, remember Merlin, as an homage to English dead soldiers. And he had these stones brought from Ireland. And back in those days, the notion of Ireland and Wales being synonymous was common. And that once they got the stones back to England, he had a team of giants assemble them into Stonehenge. And that's obviously very fanciful, but there are grains of truth in there in terms of the distance that these stones came from. Well, Stonehenge, as we think of it today, is really an incomplete work. The original Sarsen Circle, the big stones, there were 30 of them, and many of them are missing. Lots of holes, lots of pieces, but archaeologists have taken very great care to ascertain everything. Those 30 standing stones were enormous. They were up to 25 tons each. They had a unique construction that I'll mention in a second. They were much, much bigger than the blue stones, and in particular, they had a different composition. They're made from a kind of sandstone, which was quarried from not far away, from like 20 miles away to the north, in a place called West Woods. And you can see this is a piece of stone there now in the West Woods to show what the source was like. But still, they managed to shape and move these stones with the crudest of tools. There's been lots of speculation over the years on how these stones got moved these 20 miles. The original thought is, well, you know, they just got logs and they rolled them on the logs, but they weighed so much that they would have pressed the logs into the turf. More likely, archaeologists now think, is that they used sleds. Now, maybe they used the sleds on top of a kind of set of rails like you see. Here's a little animation from National Geographic. The truth is, we really have no idea how they move these stones. What we know is that they didn't have a lot of technology, no wheels, no horses to do the work for them, nor do we really understand how they managed to get them upright and stacked as they did. This remains just an area of pure speculation. One thing we do know, however, is that these stones were interlocking. They were very sophisticated, a combination of tongue and groove construction and mortise and tenon, and they are not found on any other monument of this age anywhere in the world. So whoever built Stonehenge really knew what they were doing. Now we associate the outer stone circle with modern Stonehenge, and you can see an aerial photo here. But I want to call your attention especially to these 5 trios of stone that create a horseshoe shape on the inside. These are trilithons, and there are 5 of them. These are even bigger stones. They're up to 24 feet tall. The largest of them weigh 35 tons, and they are one of these trilithons is what fell in 1797. So this is a sort of horseshoe shape within the outer stone circle. Still, the question is, how did they muster the manpower to make all this happen? Well, the BBC explains.
2 miles from Stonehenge lies Durrington Walls, the largest Neolithic site ever discovered in Britain. At a time when settlements were rarely more than a house or 2, it was a temporary home for thousands, a pop-up town full of builders. Around 2500 BC, they constructed a huge wooden circle, Woodhenge. The bluestone circle was repositioned, and the huge sarsen stones that now define it were added. Salisbury Plain now had 2 complementary sacred monuments.
So the question remains, why was Stonehenge built? We know it was built, but why? What was special about the Salisbury Plain that drew all of this attention? And the clue probably came from this excavation about a decade ago. They went down to the chalk paint bed, but this time you can see they're a little bit farther away, and they discovered grooves in the chalk surface. Remember, this whole area was glaciated during the last ice age, and glaciers, as they move across the ground, they pick up rocks, and those rocks gouge out grooves in the terrain below as the glaciers move along. So in this terrain here, the chalk, which is a very soft rock, got this impressive set of aligned grooves that you can see there. The thing is, those grooves align to the position of the summer solstice sunrise. You can see there, here's the heel stone, here's the stone circle. Everything is in alignment here. So it seems that these ancient peoples were drawn to the Salisbury Plain because of its mystical alignment with the motion of the sun. Now, this will be familiar to many of you, but guess what? The Earth has a tilted axis, and as we go around the sun, that tilt is primarily responsible for our seasons. We have equinoxes in March and September. We have solstices in June and December. And during those times, the position of the sun's rising and setting along the horizon shifts. In the summertime, it's farthest north. At the equinoxes, it's due east and west. And at the solstice in December, it's farthest south. We're coming up on that ladder now. And so, for whatever reason, this summer solstice alignment became very important to these ancient peoples. There's that heel stone I was telling you about, and you can see the sun rising behind it. I was fascinated by this whole notion. And so in 1981, my girlfriend and I, Cheryl, made a trek to England around the time of the summer solstice. I used my skying telescope CRED to get into the inner circle of the stones for this sunrise. Now, this ceremony that you see all these people here, and believe me, it attracts a wide assortment of people, has been sort of taken over by the Druids as a kind of ceremonial event, and the Druids are there. When we were there, it was cloudy. We didn't get to see the sunrise, but my Cheryl was so impressed that I had gone to all this trouble to get her into the stone circle at sunrise on summer solstice. I could only have done this for one reason, and of course that was to propose to her, which I didn't. I had no clue that I was supposed to do that. And my poor Cheryl went away, I'm sure, very disappointed on that day. But all right, let's back up to the astronomy here for a second. You might remember that at the time of the solstice, which is an ancient Latin word meaning sun stands still, the true motion of the sun along the horizon at sunrise is very slight. This is from Stellarium. You can see the calendar clicking off here. And the sun moves just a fraction of its diameter day by day. So the notion that these ancient peoples had used, Stonehenge to mark the exact date of the summer solstice was probably just an approximation. They might have used it for a ceremonial thing. And also, it was the middle of summer and there was a time to celebrate. But I want to take you back to this very first graphic that I showed you of the site. And remember those 4 stones, the barrow stones and the station stones? They also happen to be aligned to the summer solstice. And in fact, if you think about it, all I need is 2 stakes in the ground to align the summer solstice. I don't need to build, this giant stone monument. So it would seem that from its outset, the summer solstice played an important role in Stonehenge both for the sunrise at midsummer and the sunset, as this picture shows, in midwinter. They're parallel events. So they mark the passage of the sun north and south along the horizon. Now, I want to turn your attention to the moon and its orbit for a second here. As this animation shows, and as most of you know, the moon's orbit is inclined about 5 degrees with respect to the Earth's orbit, the ecliptic plane. And also it's the case that due to perturbations from the sun, that lunar orbital plane precesses around the Earth with a period of about 19 years. And so what that means is that at various times, the moon can be a little bit higher or lower in the sky over this 18.6 year period. This has a lot to do with the Saros cycle for eclipses. And a lot of people have speculated that maybe Stonehenge was established as an eclipse predictor, but that's never really been demonstrated. What is true is that from solstice, just like the sun has a farthest north rise and a farthest south rise, the moon would as well. But because of the precession of the moon's orbit, there's a kind of plus or minus 5 degree slop there. And so back in the 1960s, a guy named Gerald Hawkins imagined that Stonehenge was more than just a sunrise indicator. It was actually some kind of exotic lunar calendar. And you can see here all of the different alignments that he purported there to exist at Stonehenge. Now, some of these are to actual holes as opposed to stones. No one has really taken Hawkins seriously, but it did get people thinking a lot about why Stonehenge was actually created. Why did people go to all this trouble? And if you think about it, when else in human history has somebody decided to do something that took centuries to accomplish? And the answer is several of the great cathedrals in Europe took several centuries to build. Some bishop at one point would say, I'm going to have a cathedral built, and many generations later, it was finally accomplished. Well, here's a new wrinkle on Stonehenge and why it exists. Maybe it was just a giant calendar. A researcher named Timothy Darville, who's part of the Parker Pearson team, noticed that some of the Sarsens are skinnier than all the rest of them. So this one on the left here that you see is much narrower in size than the fat one to its right. Now, the spaces between them are pretty constant. but the sizes of the sarsens, the width, their actual width. Here's a plot. These are not of height, but actually of the width of the sarsens. And you see that there's one here, number 11, and another one here, number 21, that are abnormally smaller than the rest. And so what Darville said was, well, maybe there's something to this sort of decade of 10 thing going on. There are 30 sarsens altogether, can be divided by 3 into 3 sets of 10. Now, 30 is kind of an important number in celestial terms. It's roughly the length of the lunar phase cycle, also roughly the length of a woman's menstrual cycle. And there were 30 sarsens erected at Stonehenge. And what Darville said in his write-up was, maybe those sarsens were used to count off days of a month. And so if you did 30 times 12, broken into sets of 10, because we've got 10 fingers and 10 toes, maybe it was used as a calendar. And so 30 times 12 is 360, which is roughly the length of a year. And I can hear you screaming at me saying, Kelly, there's 365 days in a year, and you would be right. And at that point, Darville says, well, look, there are 5 sets of trilithons on the interior. That's 360, that is 20 times 30, 30 times 12, sorry. And plus these 5 trilithons equals 365. Oh, you're again screaming at me saying, Kelly, the actual length of the year is 365 and a quarter days. And every 4 years, we have to have a leap year. You're right. And so I draw your attention to these 4 initial stones that were the ones that are out on the outer periphery. So here you have, in a sense, a complete calendar. You have a way to count off 365 days and to keep track of the 4 years that lead to a leap year. Is Darville right? It's just a supposition. Again, we have no evidence to support this, but I think it's a very interesting a reason for the stones being where they are. Okay, that's all the history. Let's talk about Stonehenge today. You can go there. You can visit it. 800,000 people a year visit Stonehenge. You're looking at the main road in the area, which is the area road 303. This ditch here is a former road that used to connect with it that's been abandoned at this point. And Stonehenge is easily visible from this road. In fact, there's a very controversial plan to try to bury this road underneath to keep the area pristine. I won't really get into that. But this is what Stonehenge looks like today from above. The visitor center is way off to the right. I'm sorry, to the upper left. Sorry. And here you can see this roadway that's been abandoned. The roadway now ends here. This is where the buses will drop you off. You get to walk around this dirt passageway. You can see this is the original henge here on the outside. You don't get to go inside the stones. I'm sorry. It's just not. 800,000 people go away disappointed because they don't get to go see the stones. But if any of you have a chance to go visit Stonehenge, here's an insider tip. 2 busloads of people at the beginning and end of each day, paying a little bit extra, about $60 a person, can walk inside the stones. You're under scrutiny. You're not allowed to chisel your name in the stones, but you actually get to go inside Stonehenge. And so that's what I did with Cheryl a couple of years ago. And, you pick up the aura of these stones have been there for up to 5,000 years. There's something just weird and mystical and spooky about it. But I did remember, ladies and gentlemen, that back in 1981, which was the last time that Cheryl and I had been there, I had blown it on the marriage proposal. This time I wasn't going to screw it up. I gave her this beautiful Celtic pendant with an amethyst, which is her birthstone in the middle. You can see the stones of Stonehenge behind her. She went away a happy camper, and so did I. And with that, I think I'm going to return the control here to you, Scott, and maybe we can take some questions. I'm not sure how you handle questions. Terry, thank you very much for the invitation. This has been a labor of love, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Definitely enjoyed it. That's someplace I have always wanted to go because one of my questions was going to be, what is it like going to Stonehenge today? I had heard you could not get near the stones, so that insider tip is a real good one.
Yeah, that's right. And you know that it's right at sunrise and sunset. The and you can book it. You have to book it well in advance, must say. But if you think you're ever going to go there, it's definitely doable. And you know, you get a very intimate feeling for the place.
I bet so. So, Scott, are there any questions?
There's no questions, but Kelly, you did mention
Yeah,
something.
I have a question though.
You mentioned something about the aura that you feel, and I know that you go to, like I go to, for example, Mount Wilson or Yerkes Observatory, and you can feel the history there.
Yeah,
there is this undeniable feeling of that kind of thing. How did you feel? Does it feel
well? So the thing is, what overwhelmed me is that here was a construction, a very simple material, but obviously sophisticated, that took centuries to complete, thousands of people to complete, and the dedication that they must have. What you know, the shamans or whatever they had that drove them to complete this monument. It's just staggering to think of. There is a thought that in that period of time in England, we're talking about 2,000 to 3,000 years BC, that there were actually several cultures extending outward westward to Wales that had a kind of loose confederation. They knew about each other, they communicated, and maybe that had something to do with the migration of those bluestones from Wales to England. But whatever the reasons, Scott, the fact that so many people worked so hard so long ago, and it's there for you to appreciate and ponder today. It hasn't gone away. It's still there. They're stones. Now, some of those stones have carvings in them, from people over the last 100 years or so that left their initials or little hieroglyphs or whatever. But basically, and some of the stones that those giant saracens they've not all been re-erected. Some of them are just lying there on the ground. And so they want to preserve this for the ages to come as a reminder. And boy, it always busts my chops when somebody says, well, Stonehenge obviously had to be with the aid of aliens, because nobody that long ago would have been smart enough to do it on their own. That's just bull. I think
aliens can move big things,
Well, they can. Yeah, they can. But you think they would have left it, their business card or something. I just over a month ago, we were in the Yucatan for the annular eclipse, and we saw all the amazing Maya ruins. And of course, the Maya left very detailed records of their history and their knowledge. Their knowledge of mathematics and astronomy was amazing. And they are contemporary in a lot of ways with what was going on at Stonehenge. So I'm sorry. I think prehistoric peoples, they might not have had cell phones, but they understood their world, and they honored it.
Yeah. That's cool. It is cool.
David, you had a question?
Yes, I have a comment actually regarding the aura that Scott suggested. I have felt the aura of Stonehenge 3 times in my life. The first time was when I attended Gerald Hawkins' lecture in Montreal called Stonehenge Decoded. Right. His book had just come out, and he talked about Stonehenge not just being a calendar, but a predictor of eclipses. And I thought, that's never left me. And every time I see an eclipse, I think of Stonehenge. The second aura was when I actually visited Stonehenge in December of 1976. And I was one of the very last people to actually walk right on the site, go right up to the stones. And I thought that was really quite something. And the third aura was just now, when I heard my second lecture from you, Kelly, on Stonehenge. And I just loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. That's a high praise indeed. I'm glad you felt the weebie-jeebies just like I did.
Yeah. Is it a kind of a spooky feeling, or how would you?
No, it's just no.
You know, so Scott, one of the things is that we don't know how they erected this, the giant sarsen circle.
Yeah.
With the most rudimentary of tools. They had ropes, they had levers working on it. And you just stand there, and the pictures don't do justice to how enormous these stones actually are. And you wonder, how the heck did they move them and get them into place?
And I'm reading they weighed, I don't know how many tons each stone, 25 tons.
The trilithons are up to 35 tons.
Man.
And by the way, they're standing upright. And by the way, they've got a capstone on top of them. Go figure.
That's pretty amazing.
Well,
we're all speechless.
Speechless.
Yeah.
I just want to throw the alien thing in there because that's probably what it was.
Oh, now, all right.
So
now I get to show you. This is my piece of bluestone.
Piece of the rock, literally.
It's literally a piece of the rock. So
not from Stonehenge, though, right?
This is from that outcrop in Wales. Okay. And when I got there, I said, "Well, I'm not going home without a memento." Right. But there were no small pieces like that lying around. And so I did what any enterprising amateur astronomer would have done. I grabbed a big one and I smashed it on the ground until it broke into pieces small enough for me to take away.
And you flew that home.
I did. I absolutely did.
Oh my God. Okay.
That added a little weight to the luggage, I'm sure.
Just a bit. Just a bit.
It also,
but I want to show you. Hold on a sec.
Okay.
I think you can see. You see the white specks in there?
Yeah.
That's the spottedness of this, what's called spotted dolerite, which was the key to making the link between the stones at Stonehenge and this particular outcrop in Wales.
Oh, so they know for a fact that those stones came from there.
Yeah, it's CSI geology. It's a great story. Great story.
That is amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
40 kilometers away. I mean, it's just nuts. It is. So
that's why it feels so amazing to stand there.
Very apt title,
Yeah.
But obviously, humans made it, so unless it was aliens.
Right. And
can you imagine the creativity?
Well, the brute force of this. I mean,
the brute force of it. And Terry, and to your point, the Sarsens were very late to the game. As we all know, I can put 2 stakes in the ground and line up with the summer solstice, and I'll have a fairly accurate reading on that, depending on how far away the stakes are from each other. I didn't need 30, 20-ton stones in a circle, to make that point. And so there came there must have been an inflection point, a decision point in the development of Stonehenge, where somebody says, "Oh, the blue stones aren't enough. We really need something really big here and profound." And Carroll, just we need something bigger and better. And so you wonder what the multi-generational chain of command must have been. Was there a family of shamans who passed from father to son? Over hundreds of years, this knowledge. If it was a calendar, who kept track? Was there a team of scribes who were off on the side keeping track of the days? As was that's what happened in Maya culture, and we just don't know. The Maya left us a lot of clues. The builders of Stonehenge left us nada.
just incredible that that momentum could keep on happening over centuries and just keep on the baton, so-called, being passed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's just incredible.
Yeah,
And keep the
it
same
is.
interest level up.
Now, are there people buried at Stonehenge?
Well, so that's a really good question, Scott. There were discovered, especially 10 years ago when they did a lot of really careful excavations. You remember Hawley back 110 years ago took all of the cremated remains and he dumped them all in one hole. Really stupid thing to do, but at least they were all there. And so I think that those remains have been removed. I don't know this for a fact. I don't think they just left them there and buried them. They would have taken them away for forensic studies. For example, somebody asked me when I gave this lecture, how do you know whether these were like people who willingly built the monument versus were they slaves? A very good question, right? And so it seems to be from these these chips of bone that we have, that whoever the people were at that time buried, they had a diet that was very rich. It was a rich diet. There was a lot of protein and stuff like that. And so the implication from that is that these weren't slaves on the verge of starvation. It was a race of people who collectively were well fed. They took care of each other and they built these monuments collectively.
Well, that's pretty interesting. It's amazing what they've discovered. I'm since all through history, everything that has changed. It's amazing. I can't imagine what it feels like just to stand there. I see why you would feel the way you would.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. You just stand there open mouthed at the immensity of it, of the complexity of it, and trying to understand the justification for it. It was a great experience for me, and I hope you get there someday.
I do too. That's going to have to be going closer to the top of my bucket list.
There are a lot of us that are watching and us in this group here that have done and enjoy doing educational outreach. What is I understand there's volunteers at Stonehenge and they do the interpretation of Stonehenge. What's the quality of that like? What would you say?
Well, let's see. When I went there 2 or 3 years ago, the docents did not spend a lot of time explaining Stonehenge to us. Where you will find all the good information, Scott, is the overarching arm of the British government that handles these antiquities is called English Heritage. And so if you go to the English Heritage site, you will find a lot of really good explanatory detail about the construction techniques, the geological state, the comparison of Stonehenge with other areas, why we're so sure about the origin of the bluestones and so forth. And so, sorry, I should have had a list of sites to go to, but English Heritage is the organization that oversees this. And you can find it if you just Google Stonehenge English Heritage, you'll land on the site. That also is the site, by the way, Terry, where you make your reservations to go visit.
Thank you. That will help. All right. Has anybody else got any questions? All right.
Kelly,
well, if nobody has anything else, Kelly, thank you. That was amazing.
Hey, you're very welcome. I loved I always love engaging with the league. It's such an important organization. As you all certainly know, but maybe some of the audience doesn't, the linkage and the formative linkage between the league and Sky and Telescope goes back to its earliest days, to its very DNA. And so we've always had a soft spot for each other, and that will continue indefinitely, I'm sure. Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Kelly. We appreciate it, and we love working with you. And I hope we see you soon.
Okay, that's a deal.
So, all right. Anybody else? Carroll, Scott?
I'm all
Nope.
good.
All right.
I'm all good.
Well,
I
let me
really
just say
enjoyed this.
happy holidays to everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to turn it back over to Scott, and you can close it up.
Okay. All right. So I will do that. I want to thank the audience that tuned in today, and extend our thanks to the Astronomical League for all their selfless work that they do, and for putting together this monthly program called Astronomical League Live. Terry, you already have, I think you already have the next date already picked out. Is that right?
Yes, January 19th. We're getting the 2024 date set up. For next month, it will be the 19th of January.
Okay. And can I give have Kelly give a shameless plug for the Astronomical Retreat program?
Yes, you can. Go right ahead.
Right?
Well, okay. So every summer, I and a couple of others venture into the dark woods of Maine. One of the darkest. For those of you who live west of the Mississippi, you know that there are vast areas of the Rocky Mountains that are super dark. Here on the East Coast, we have to pick carefully, and it turns out that Maine is one of those places that is still very dark. We have been fortunate to connect with a husband-wife team who own a parcel of land in central Maine with a limiting magnitude of 6.3. And during the summer, each summer, we set aside a week for what we call an astronomy retreat, the Maine Astronomy Retreat and Symposium, MARS for short. And it's limited to about 45 people. It's not a big, it's sort of the anti-Stellophane, if you will. So if you want more information, you bring your telescope, you set it up, you leave it set up all week, you observe all night and sleep all day. What else is there, right? All the meals and everything are cared for. You're in very comfortable cabins. And if you want more information, just go to astronomyretreat.com. Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Kelly. That sounds like a great time. All right. Well, Scott, I will turn it back over to you then.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, everyone. I took the initiative to create a little promo video for the Astronomical Retreat. We'll play that next, and we will see you next month. Take care.
Thanks so much. Thanks a lot.
You.
See you, Carroll. See you, Terry, and see you,
Yeah,
Scott.
good to see you all again.